mic on? Yes, okay. Hi everyone. Wow, what a beautiful introduction. I feel like most of it's been said now. If I can just show you a whole bunch of beautiful pictures. So I just wanted to just give you a side note. We have an issue with this clicker. So I'm not completely in control of the slides, but Jane and I are going to do our best to move through the presentation in an efficient way and not labor things. So when I do this, I'm just acting. Yes, so as Prof says, I was invited to work on a project 12 years ago with the Nando's business. It was their new head office. And at the time, they wanted to create their spiritual home here in South Africa, in Johannesburg. And I was invited to go and see some of their restaurants, and I went to London to see what they were doing there. And the business is a massive business. There are more than 1,300 restaurants around the world on many continents and many cities, and they employ thousands and thousands of people. And they asked me what I thought of the restaurants and the aesthetic and just how they were doing the job of sharing South African design. And I said, it feels like someone else is telling our story. It doesn't feel South African. And then, of course, they asked me, so what would you do? And I said, well, I wouldn't design, I would curate. I would bring in the voices of many. And that was what I did with the head office project. So I responded to the challenge by curating the biggest showcase of South African design. I cheekily challenged the investors, the shareholders, to spend all of the resource for FF&E only on South African design. And so it became this massive showcase of contemporary South African design. And it was significant 12 years ago. Our sector is a young sector, ever-growing, very exciting, but tiny. I knew about the sector because I had been working in the magazine industry. I had been telling stories, working with South African design products for publications, and so I understood the potential of the industry. And the one thing I realized after all these years, when you work on a project like this, you need a champion. And Nando's was our champion, has been our champion, continues to be our champion, and we continue to see new champions and add champions to our project. So what happened after we did this beautiful showcase, all the interior designers that work on Nando's from around the world came to see it, and the first thing they asked was, where can we get all these things? So we very quickly created a brochure, a catalogue, and then that very quickly moved into an online platform. We launched that 7 years ago, and the Nando's portal to Africa has sold more than 65,000 pieces of South African design, and the more than 200 million rands of revenue goes straight back into the sector. We work with the levy, and the levy is also applied back into our business, which draws out new talent. So our platform, Nando's Hot Young Designer, has been running for 10 years now. We've just celebrated 10 years. It's a biannual platform. And this platform seeks to draw out new talent, but also mentor new talent and create an ecosystem where we link the young designers to established designers. We create opportunities for prototyping and showcasing, and then eventually market access should the products be viable for these opportunities. So there you see our statistics. The reason that we can exist so beautifully in the Nando's business is because we are a purpose project. Nando's has many purpose projects. One of the ones that inspired me the most when I started working with them was their commitment to the fine arts. They have a massive collection of fine art with more than 25,000 pieces of authentic art curated by one eye. So the collection spans 30 years of South African creativity. And when I came into the space and started working with them, one of my questions as well was, if you're so committed to fine arts, if you're a business that creates interior experiences, why do you not do the same with South African design? And their response was that they didn't know that they could. So I also love a challenge, so I set about showing them how they could do this. So I've shared a little bit about HYD and how special that is. Jade, the next one. Yep.
It's now been 8 years that I've been full-time Planet Modern Gesture, designing lighting and other home decor products. As a young creator, we focus very much on the creative side of things and be easy to just like get in there and be creative. But sometimes on the business side of things, we just need a little bit more guidance.
We go on a journey with the designers that we notice. So all of the finalists are still part of the ecosystem, and these designers are still earning passive income from patents that they made a few years ago. They've all gone on to participate in different opportunities within our space, and we believe there's so much potential that still exists for them. So this is something we're really looking into, the patenting potential and the licensing. The community that we've created is one of the things that really sets us apart from other organizations in many ways, because we stay connected to the designers. We're all about the creative economies, and we're also about entrepreneurs, and we believe that young people invested in the creative side of things have amazing opportunities to generate small businesses and eventually employ others.
The impact is huge, and the impact is also huge on our suppliers that we place orders with. So this entire community that we belong to of makers and suppliers and contractors has been positively affected.
The revenue goes back into the program to draw out new artists or new designers and to create an ecosystem that is very vibrant and agile. Because the challenges are there on the ground here in South Africa. Young designers don't have access to prototyping opportunities or funding to prototype their pieces. So we need to be inventive around this space, and we need to find ways to support young emerging designers and seize them participating in the industry without massive investments.
That's something that the design community that works with Nando's, the South African design community, is going to get involved in. Just to the next slide. So I touched on a few things there. There you go. So our business is called Clout SA. A few years ago we separated out from the Nando's. The thinking was that if we could have such a big impact on the design sector with one business, Nando's, it would be very important that we start finding other partners to grow the opportunity. So what we focus on is taking South African design to the global stage, but also educating South Africans about South African design. It's interesting that it's because it's such a niche space in our country that there isn't much of a spend, but that's ever growing and changing now as publications are also coming on board, and there's so much access on Instagram, and it's a very exciting space for creators to operate in. So that's ever changing, which is incredibly exciting for us, because as that goes on, we meet more and more designer makers that are bringing new products to us. What's also very important about what we do is the positive storytelling from South Africa. I'm extremely passionate about positive stories from South Africa. I want to have a situation one day when you say South Africa to anyone around the world, they don't say cricket or rugby, they say, design and beautiful pieces and art. That's my blue skies objective for the work that I do. I think our designers have amazing capacity to share stories, and I'll be doing that in this presentation. You'll meet some of the designers that we work with, that we have drawn out and also mentored. And so another aspect of South African design, which I think is very interesting, is the preservation of craft. A lot of our young and very innovative designers are including craft elements, which is preserving these very ancient skill sets and also helping new generations of family members commit to the project, whereas before they would feel that it was something that they didn't want to participate in because it didn't feel of place or exciting, or they were not maybe able to generate income. And so being associated with contemporary South African designers, this whole space becomes more energized. And we're seeing very innovative and exquisitely beautiful products coming from South Africa that harness the storytelling, that harness the potential of craft and making. We can go to the next slide. So I've mentioned that we are a massive collaboration. We are a massive sector collaboration. We represent many established designers, but also emerging designers. And that creates this beautiful network. You heard in the video how I challenge our established designers to work with emerging designers in order to deliver impeccable prototypes. Prototyping space is a very challenging space in South Africa. Many designers are educated, they have beautiful education, they've been to UJ, they can tell you their story, there's no shortage of talent and skill set, but they have never had the opportunity to actually manufacture pieces of furniture and understand the whole ecosystem. And so we invite these collaborations into the business, and because we are all invested, established designers are selling lots of products through us. They want to contribute to the sector, they want to contribute to the industry, they are welcoming, when it's right, the younger designers to come and prototype and learn from them. And we believe that this is extremely important in our sector and really heralds the future of South African design. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, there you go. An extraordinary part of contemporary South African design is the expression of graphic patterning. And the graphic patterning has been born from the heritage of South African craft. South African craft is unique in the sense that it shares processes that are ancient and have been part of the tradition of South African communities for generations. And now young designers are looking at their culture, they're looking at their heritage, and they're looking at these amazing craft forms that have given birth to these amazing graphic patterns. And they're bringing these patterns to life in new forms, in new formats, with new techniques.
I found that we do have to adapt a little bit in order to survive. But nothing is so sacred that it can't be adapted to ensure its survival.
I've always appreciated what patterns and shapes mean. I'm from a cultural level where my grandmother used to do a lot of beadwork, and she used to speak through beadwork. And within Zulu culture, males are not allowed to do beadwork, so I took that and I started putting it on furniture and other mediums to respect, but also to let the culture, to let the art form live longer.
I love the idea of keeping the African aesthetic of my specific culture, because I know that as we grow out into this modern world, we tend to lose a bit of ourselves in this contemporary world. So I always want to keep that, that culture with me.
So I think there's something really exciting happening right now. I think for the first time, our heritage is being expressed in ways that are not only referencing the past, but looking to the future, looking to ways of communicating identity in a contemporary way, which speaks to the young, which speaks to the youth, which allows everyone to celebrate the past in a very contemporary and relevant way. And we can go to the next slide. So I just draw out a few pieces. This is the Ishkalani dancing skirt. Tabisa and Joel was the winner of our first Hot Young Designers competition. At the time, she was working in the film industry, and she had a big design to make things. She entered with the 22.20 light, which you see at the top there. It's a woven light, and it's inspired by the dancing skirts of the Tonga women. That piece has sold hundreds and sits in many spaces around the world, not just in Nando's. What's important about our program is we don't hold on to any of the intellectual property of the designs that we may collaborate with designers on. It stays with the maker, the designer, and they are welcome to sell the pieces to anyone. The next slide. Yeah, you see Rosa's beautiful rugs, which are inspired by beadwork, and one of Tabisa's black and white tutu lines. The next slide. These beautiful mirrors have been made by Sitaba, and they are made from incredible Ndebele wedding adornments. They are Matikoza saw the woman always sitting on the side of the road, selling these exquisite ornamental pieces, but she asked herself, you know, what do you do with that? I want to buy them, but I don't know what to do with them. So she took it upon herself to start a project where she just inserted a mirror. And so it became the frame of a mirror. And it's a very beautiful object and very intriguing. And it means that we get to tell the story of the Ndebele through these pieces. It's very native, also inspired by Tilly White, the textures and colors. Next slide. Sifiso Shanga, you heard him talking about his grandmother and beading, and this is a piece by Sifiso. Next slide. The Clavisa bench, what a monumental piece by Sifiso and Joel. It's at the back there, and it's been woven by an incredible group of women from KwaZulu-Natal. Sifiso went to meet with them, and she's worked with them for a number of years now. What she showed them was how to weave on a different surface, because all of the shapes that they were making were vessels. And Sifiso designed the bench. The bench itself is manufactured by a business called Houtlander, and the weavers actually weave onto that structure. Sifiso, that piece is in the Decorative Arts Museum in the Louvre, and Sifiso is the first South African designer to have work included in those significant collections. So we planted a seed with Sifiso many years ago, and she has grown that opportunity into something significant, not only for herself and her family that all work in her business, but for South Africa, to take the magnificence of what's possible here to the world through these incredible pieces. You can go to the next slide. So this is just a collaboration, this is a beautiful collaboration between Laurie Reed. Laurie has an amazing studio in Cape Town. He works with sustainable materials. He works with a lot of ceramic, but he's very passionate about working with cork. These particular benches, if we go to the next slide, they are absolutely magnificent and very intriguing shapes. Corsi presented his work to us at one of our designer days, where we give live feedback to designers. They can bring images and share their products with us, and then we have a panel and we give beautiful feedback, all very positive and encouraging feedback. And this piece really stood out, and I recognized a connection between Corsi and Laurie Reed. Of course, in any collaboration, it's not only the aesthetic connection, but it's also a personality connection. It has to work, it has to flow, it has to feel right. And when that happens, you get something really special. So of course he had never developed any of these products. He just imagined these beautiful products that are inspired by his visits to Lesotho, the mountain kingdom. And you see on these beautiful pieces that reference indigenous dwellings, the beautiful shapes. He has included the woven hats that are traditional hats from Lesotho, and landscapes, mountains, and then the millie fields and the horses. It's a really intriguing piece. I was captivated by it. We go through, and these pieces are not commercial pieces, but they needed to be brought to life, and they have been featured in some very impressive environments. Laurie represents the piece, and of course he earns a license fee because he stays the manufacturer of the piece. That's not set in stone. Of course he can find other manufacturers, but this is a very technical piece. And because Laurie was super excited about the shapes, and he related to the shapes, he wanted to bring it to life in cork. So we brought Corsi from Durban, where he lived at the time, to Cape Town, and he had his first experience of working in a studio with a very established, meticulous, and very innovative and technical designer. There you see the pieces included in showcasing. Go to the next slide. So what you heard in one of the videos is the story of the patterning, and it features quite magically across all products and comes into our spaces in South Africa for the very reasons that the designer shared with you. And that was one of the things that I thought was important about the Nando's world. I noticed that they were using so much pattern, and the patterns did not come from authentic sources. So we created a call-out to young designers to design patterns. And that's gone on to become a monumental pattern library on the Nando's portal to Africa. And the designers earn a license fee every time a pattern is used. And people always ask, so how do you control that? Well, it's a very hard thing to control, but because our community are all invested in this project, it means that they respect the process, they respect the intellectual property, and the license fees are managed through our portal. So the order is placed when the product is placed, and the remuneration has been established. If it's a small piece like a chair, it's a small amount. If it goes onto a big piece like a mural, it's a much bigger amount. The designer is always included in correspondence around the scale of things, even though we have a square meter rate and so on. It's important for us to negotiate these costs, and I think everybody learns through this process. We are always learning as well. And we can go on. So the pattern mark, this is a very special, we can go to the next slide, Jay. This little chair that you see, we've sold literally hundreds of these around the world, probably thousands. It's a school chair, we all know it in South Africa. They are manufactured in Cape Town by a business called Naturalis. And every time the designers, the interior designers choose patterns, the license fee is paid over to the designer, the young designer, and they are constantly earning the passive income. But not only that, these chairs have become very iconic in the Nando's world, and the juxtaposition of all the writers' patterns has been something really celebrated, and I'm very proud of this. This was when we announced the 10 finalists. I did a stairway to heaven. When the designers arrived, they had never seen their patterns printed before. It was a wonderful moment. We can go on. There you see a mural of Bonolo Chipapi's patterning. That's in the Nando's central kitchen. Big murals are often included in the Nando's world. Going. There you see it on a drive-through. Lorena Mabaso's beautiful patterns that have been inspired by drum beats. This is a casa in Johannesburg, Agrippa Montisedi's beautiful patterning. This is a Pond Creative that created that pattern. In Australia, it's easy for the patterns to travel because the restaurants around the world, no matter what the budget is for that particular restaurant, can afford to have patterning and pay the license fees. We can go on. This is a very special project that features a lot of patterning. It's at Constitutional Hill here in South Africa. Constitutional Hill was a political prison. It's a very hard space. It's a deeply disturbing and moving space. And we had the beautiful opportunity to work on a music studio there. Nando's is very committed to the arts and to music. Rob Rosen, one of our founders, believes in the power of music to unite people, just the way design and art does. And so some of the bunkers have been turned into this exceptional music studio. And I had the privilege of curating the spaces and bringing in our designers. And there you see we respected the building and left a lot of the exposed walls, but included panels and sound and so on. So you see some of Glorina's majestic patterns there. Go on. This is an amazing designer. So I'm designing into our Hot Young designers, and his patterns are, he comes from the Eastern Cape, and he's a fashion designer, but he's very passionate about communicating aspects of his culture and heritage, and he weaves these patterns into his collections of knitwear. So here you see, we can just go through these beautiful slides of his amazing patterns, very contemporary and bold and inspired by patterning that's painted on houses, indigenous houses in Lesotho, and the fields of the Eastern Cape, and I'm sure you'll all agree that's just phenomenal and spectacular and just so unique. And here you see, we worked with Tandazani on wallpaper, so his knitwear lives in a homeware collection. This is a showcase we did at the beginning of the year. When we do showcases, we make sure that the opportunities stretches across emerging designers and established designers. I believe that when we showcase like that, everybody looks fantastic. And it means that young designers are seeing their work alongside award-winning, incredible established designers. They're having conversations. I think that's something really important for showcasing. It's not only about the public and who comes to see, but those moments when the designers are actually present and they are standing, manning the stand, talking to each other, learning from each other, building all of these relationships. the community grows and becomes stronger, and people feel good about participating in something as wondrous as this. This was in Manchester. I took the opportunity to recognize that in the Nando's world, we need upholstery fabric. And so I've developed woven upholstery fabric. South Africa used to have many mills, and we used to have a rich industry. And slowly but surely, because that's moved off to other countries, we've lost that ability. There still are a few mills. And the business I collaborated with is called The Mill, and they were generous in their accepting of this project to create beautiful woven upholstery fabric with a very high rub count that can be used on booths and bunks and all that kind of thing. I love the collection, it's exceptional. And it's in the Nando's world, it starts with a trickle and then it becomes a big wave. So that's where we are at with this project, just launched. We go into the collection. Oh, this is a video.
I just get a smile on my face when I think about like Nando's and like all the incredible people I've met at Nando's and have been so incredibly supportive, because in all honesty, having that encounter and meeting those people has changed the entire trajectory of my life. I just got goosebumps.
You know, Nando's was just one of those competitions where they helped me with my business.
It helps us upgrade our businesses. It helps us upgrade our techniques, our technology, our machinery. It helps us involve more people.
People have been helpful. People have been willing to support us. People have been willing to share. The Hot Young Designer Competition as a platform is just a testament to that.
We're a company that loves South Africa. We're a company that loves the creativity that's embedded in South Africans, in all South Africans. And you know, how to unpack this energy and put it into a meaningful commercial way was really how we started this whole competition. Nando's Young Hot Designers has really been something that, in my mind, has just transcended any kind of wish that I might for this to be more and more successful.
Go to the next slide. Yeah, so here you see the thread collection on chairs. We can just go through these quite quickly. I'm obsessed with beautiful images, and this is Falela, who's one of the designers of some of the fabric in our collection. You've seen the Twimanda, this iconic pattern. That one's lost. Our design.
I cannot emphasize enough the impact that big businesses have on us as small businesses operating in the creative industry. When they take a chance on us, the ripple effects are really something that is underestimated, actually. It sends a message of confidence to other big businesses that if this brand is confident and happy enough to associate themselves with the creative industry in South Africa, not only are they ahead of their time in their thinking, but also it gives assurance to their peers that, oh wait, what are we missing out on? Is this the field that we also should be playing at? You are not going to find small businesses that are more passionate, committed, dedicated to making things work, to making a plan, delivering a quality service, and doing it in a way that seeks to answer the questions of sustainability, youth unemployment, for young people to generate income, for older people to generate income with the skill sets that they already have. We are bold, we are bright, we are unapologetic, we are in your face. Here we are inviting our world to participate.
And Nando's has been incredibly passionate about the creative communities of South Africa. They've understood how important it is to share this beautiful voice with the rest of the world.
For the very first time, is the most extraordinary work of a new generation. next one. Yeah, so I've mentioned Tabisa and Joel. Tabisa often shares the stage with me. When we met all those years ago, when she entered, all of our lives were about to change. She's an extraordinary ambassador to South African design. And one of the things that stands out about Tabisa is the way she harnesses craft. You saw in the previous slide the telewire bowls, which she has repurposed into beautiful lights that get more complex than that. These are very simple ones that sell very well. Keep on going, Jane, thanks. This is the showcase when we prototyped all of the finalists' work. There's Tabisa. She was a joint winner with Sam Foden. That was Tabisa 10 years ago. There it is. A magical tutu light. And Tabisa's gone on to literally create, I would say, hundreds of lights out of different materials, always championing craft. The beadwork is exceptional. She not only designs lighting, but that's one of the things that she's become famous for. And of course, you saw the Tabisa bench. Last year, Tabisa was selected to be one of the next generation design program finalists for Dolce & Gabbana. And she really did an exceptional job of making these majestic pieces. You don't see it very clearly, but they do include beadwork and mirrors, and she was very inspired by traditional craft. And the chairs themselves, when she shared the designs, the manufacturer in Italy said no, they couldn't make those chairs. And she said, well, don't worry, we'll make them in South Africa. So they did. Hoysander made the chairs. This is her Jersey skyline. Tabisa's very passionate about Johannesburg and the potential that the city has and the energy, and she uses those lights as symbols of the passion she has for the potential of the city. There you see some of the telewire beautiful pieces, the little ones. These are the Alfred lights, named after Alfred, who has passed, but an exceptional weaver. This is the beautiful smiley pendant with the beads and cascading. Go on. A version of a Tabisa bench, and the magnificent Tabisa bench in 2 colorways. Go on. So there the women are, Tabisa spent time helping them understand how to take their exceptional craft skills and apply it to a different surface. This is a Nando's restaurant here in Johannesburg. You see some of the magnificent pendants that Tabisa has designed and have been manufactured by weavers. Mahatjan designed Kolki that did the ceramics. There's her smiley pendants and a David Cranor bench. These are in the UK, massive. They love buying massive things. They have these very dramatic restaurants all over the UK. There's, I think, a version of 400 and ever growing. Continue. This is a very special project for me. Go to the next slide. It takes us to this beautiful part of the world in the Eastern Cape. It's called Hamburg, and it's a village, a rural village on an estuary. Up until last year, there was only access to the village via a gravel road, which meant that it kept the community quite isolated. More than 25 years ago, a woman called Carol Hofmeyer, a doctor, came to live in Hamburg. She was a medical doctor, but she had a desire to work in the creative spaces. In the creative sector, she wanted to make beautiful things. And that's Carol, you can wait here on this slide. And so she started a community project, and it was all focused on embroidery. But at the time, the AIDS pandemic was rife in South Africa, and because Carol is a doctor and her husband is a doctor, they couldn't opt out of their calling and their profession. So Carol became very involved in the community, and she used her connection with creativity and the craft that she was teaching and that women were teaching her to build community in Hamburg, to the extent that Hamburg became a place where people dying of AIDS would come for care, health care, and Carol rallied in the area to get antiretrovirals for all of the village clinics. So the connection between community and sharing and coming together and sharing stories and crafting and making is at the very heart of this incredible project. A few years ago, I was invited by a woman called Pippa Hetherington to visit. She told me on the phone, it was just after lockdown, and I was really looking for an adventure. I really needed to get out. And she told me about Hamburg, and I said, don't tell me about Hamburg without inviting me. So I got on a plane very quickly and flew to East London and then traveled by car to the village. And since then, many magical things have happened. I met the embroiderers. I was able to go back regularly to spend time in the landscape, to spend time with the people, and just be blown away by how exquisite this somewhat untouched village is. A very, very precious and special place. It kind of showed me what could be if things were just a little bit different in South Africa. And the things that we want to invest in and nurture. And 2 years ago, I was invited to a conference that wanted to look at the future of the Keskaama Arts Trust. And they thought it might be a good idea to invite me. And I was so pleased because I had secretly been wanting to work with them. But I didn't want to just come in and, interfere, if you would. I wanted to be invited. So when they did invite me, I was very delighted. And I proposed a passive income project, so having learned from Nando's and licensing, and I knew it could be possible. And so I challenged the embroiderers to create an embroidery that looked at a scenic landscape. So what my idea was that we would turn this beautiful scenic landscape, which would be an African version of a scenic landscape, into a wallpaper and a fabric. And I went about creating that. Here we have Annalisa and Tego and Nozibela. It's not a great photograph, but this was the process. And I wanted something that could be repeated. I've always been obsessed with French tapestries and scenic tapestries. And so this was going to be a version of that. And the way I work was, in this instance, very high-tech, low-tech, PowerPoints, copy-pasting, and lots of WhatsApps. You can see on the next slide. Go to the next one. We just had a little group, and we would share little notes, very quick little photographs. This is working, this isn't working, perhaps we need a little bit more of this. And this exquisite and really precious piece came to life. There it is. It's not a great visual of it, but you'll see now. We started with the marketing of this piece and straight into a beautiful showcase. So the designing process, invited David Praynor, who's an exceptional carpenter, innovative. He made all of these organic shapes that he wanted to showcase. There it is. The furniture is all out of timber, but it's called the ruk, and it's an Afrikaans word, and it's tug at your heartstrings. But also, if you do that with a rope, it makes all this ripple, and that's the furniture, and it tugs at your heartstrings. But the Keskaama embroidery, seeing it in this format, I think really tugs at my heartstrings. As I mentioned, we always showcase, we include other designers to make sure we have a very rich experience, and also that commercially the opportunity touches many. It's been very directional, this particular wallpaper, and I've seen now David has a new range that he's working with illustration and softening his aesthetic. At the same time, Sphere Arts Trust also collaborates with the Keskaama embroiderers. They present artworks, the artists go and spend time in Hamburg, and then the embroideries are created in collaboration. So the skill set, but the actual artwork. Then we were invited by the Africa store, also part of our community. It's an amazing store at the waterfront in Cape Town that sells a lot of contemporary pieces, but it's apparel, it's things that you would buy as a tourist visiting, but lots of clothing and so on, and they wanted to share the Keskaama project. And so they generously connected us with some of their makers, and we now do cushions and tablecloths and napkins and so on. I finished this project 3 weeks ago. It's a boardroom, and I feel very lucky to have been able to have free reign with this space, because some very interesting decision makers sit in this space and allowed me to create this quite fantastical world for them to work from. I think it's a very beautiful example of the way the wallpaper really significantly changes how you feel in this room. It's a very beautiful room because it has this amazing ceiling and so on, but I think it's become incredibly special with the river landscape and the birds and the stitching, the giant stitching, almost fantastical. And then you have the woven lights of Sydney where Charlie to complement the stitch aesthetic. And Jack Nudge's incredible copper surface tables to the copper with the reflections, and his wall-mounted server. We can go on.
Myself and two amazing designers, Siaka Mbele and Gloria Mabaso, were asked to be a part of this amazing challenge that would transform the Old Fort coffee shop into this beautiful lounge area that will be a space to allow people to come and gather, get to converse, get to meet, and get to share ideas.
The first person that came to mind, I was like, I'm not doing this alone. Not doing this alone. So I approached Nelson, and somebody that I've always looked up to. He also has that love for heritage and South African history in his life, in his design works.
At first it was a bit daunting because you don't get to design such places every day, in our career, so it's one of those once-off projects, one of those once-off big opportunities that you don't get to do often.
The approach for this Constitutional Hill project was a little bit different from previous projects. It wasn't just about designing and putting mood boards together, different stuff. It was about how do we create a conversation, and if we can tell a South African story through design. And when I actually even started with my team, we were talking about how little we know about our history. And we thought we knew until we visited the site and we started doing research. And every time we stumble upon each research, we find something new.
The project itself allowed me to realize so much about the history of our country and where we are today, but also getting to honor, the present time and where we're going as a country. And I think at the center of everything else was the people themselves.
We try to create a space where it represents the future of South Africa, but it has to have traces of our past, because that's very important to us. And we realized we have to now make a mark through using design as a tool to sort of tell this history, because it's no longer just our stories, it's the country's story.
Also, what we found when we were researching about even freedom fighters is that they were just people. They were fathers, mothers. They woke up, made tea, and they were educated with such distress. People were able to actually go about their life and still continue to even study, and then get out of prison and then start companies and build that.
What you'll find with a lot within my design is a lot of the space, original and existing forms still exist, where walls have been kept the same but repainted, and the floors itself have been refurbished but they've been kept the same, ceilings have been refurbished but have been kept the same. And then what I did was I allowed the newness to respect to look back but also look forward. Within the design itself there's a lot of screens, but what I did was if these screens were to block off, then again, what are we doing? We are dividing. So I created these screens that have patterns that represent all of us, the males, the females, the young, the old. But within the midst of that, there's so much of air gaps and spaces in these screens to represent transparency. So, you know, it's creating the space where we see each other, I see you, which is part of centrality and respecting each other and seeing each other.
We decided to also create the space in such a way that it becomes a manifestation of the power of collaboration. So we've used quite a number of local designers, Houtlanda, Urban Native, Tabisa from, Mesh Tea, to sort of display that sense of diversity within the furniture, lighting, fabrics, and so on. It became a bit personal as well, because I think a lot of us started referencing, like my dad was actually an activist. He was the first vice president of COSAS, which is the Council of South African Students. And at the time, Ephraim Mohale was the president. So I grew up hearing these stories from him. And it's the first time that I've now interacted with a space that, speaks the same language. It became very real.
That video just sums up a lot of the elements of this conference and the things that are so important about design and the potential of design. I never get enough of seeing the designers talk the way they did in this video about the past and this new generation that have grown up free, but to understand aspects of it and to build. So Sianda Vele, one of my favorite designers that we work with, he was a lecturer at the university in KwaZulu-Natal, and he works with us on different projects. Sometimes as an interior designer, and sometimes he renders work for us. But one of the spaces that I love working with him is when he designs rugs. And this is a recent project, you'll see the final, but an absolutely massive carpet. Sianda's a maestro at bringing in patterning and referencing aspects of culture that he chooses to speak to a particular project. His business is called Pinder Design. There, his beautiful rugs, populated spaces at Flame Studio. That's in Flame Studio. The rehearsal room. And the Truth to Power meeting room spaces. This is the end product where those three incredible designers collaborated on a very humble project. Our intention is to draw them into something more significant. And we have been working on something in the side, so let's see what happens next. But here's another rug from Cape Town Furniture Week, and prototypes of our recent project designers, which the project was screens, and then you see a John Bogle woven bench. We finished this year, but that massive carpet that you saw, and then some satellite carpets. I worked with Tuami Zulu on the space, and we brought in many of our fantastic designers, Dr. and Mrs. Kolke Design, natural artists, and last bit. This is the Spear Arts Trust, and I mentioned them earlier. They are the curators of arts in the Nando's world, but they also have 2 studios which are housed in Union House in Cape Town. Go to the next slide. This project deeply inspired me, the collection of the arts, as I mentioned, and the commitment that the businesses had to creativity in this form. They also started something called the Kakambile Bead Studio. And it's housed at Spear Arts Trust, but it is a very contemporary form of bead making. And artists, practicing artists, bring their works and they commission beaded versions of the artworks. Photographer Zanele Mahole has created many works that have been showcased around the world in significant galleries and institutions. It's a form of expression which I think is incredibly unique to South Africa. This particular project you see here, you'll recognize those patterns. We did a wonderful screen. We did small pattern versions of the 10 finalists' work in beads. Absolutely beautiful. You can see the textures and how fine the work is. And within our ecosystem, we have some massive art panels all done in this process. Absolutely beautiful. Many hands working in the most sophisticated way with this very special and unique material. And we just go through these. And you see one of the panels. And then also housed at the Spear Arts Trust is a mosaic studio. The Mosaic Studio was run as a learning academy. For a number of years, there were many journeymen, young people that were sponsored to learn the skill set of mosaic. The mosaic is incredibly fine, and the students have all gone through a very technical learning process. Also learned incredible color theory and understanding how to combine the smelty, which is the Italian glass, which is used in mosaicing, but also they've included African materials, some more robust stones and unusual stone to make some of the pieces more reflective of the landscape, I would say, here in South Africa. So this is a piece by Tabisa, the servant designed by Tabisa, and then here included our beaded panels. Go to the next one. Yeah, more of the mosaicing. We can go to the next one. This is an artwork by Henk Serfontein. He went to Mozambique. We can go back, pause there for a sec. We have a few projects in Mozambique, which is very exciting. And Henk is one of the artists, and it was a dialogue between Mozambique and South Africa. And these pieces were inspired by the cityscapes. The mosaicing is exquisite, and the piece of furniture by Peterson and Leonard, a local manufacturer of chairs and servers and all sorts of contemporary. Their aesthetic is far more Scandinavian, but they have very many practices that they include amongst things, recycling and making sure that their studio will eventually and very soon have zero waste, and working with many young people to mentor them through the processes. So our ecosystem is very rich, and the cross-pollination is very layered. Yeah, and I'll just finish off with a few slides of some of the Nando's restaurants. David Crane's benches and some art. John Bergel's chairs and woven lights. Beautiful woven bench. Cork by Laurie Reed and a terrazzo bench by Reed. Candace Lawrence's lights suspended there. One of Candace's lights and Ashanti's recycled fabric in the background. Cocky tiles and egg design, as well as Peterson and Leonard chairs. And then it's a piece of smaller woven lights there. And that's where I am. Thank you very much for your time.